Hi, friends. We're back for another episode of the Brockton Bay Chronicles. I'm Keith. With me, as always, is my co-host, friend, and worm novice, Andy. Andrew, does your attorney find Jack's terms and conditions acceptable?
Well, after extensive consultation, I would have to say no. My attorney said that there were holes that you could drive a Mack truck through on that, and that if there was any way that we could avoid this contract, we should do it. But knowing the world is as it is, I think we're stuck with it whether we like it or not.
Yeah, sorry, you got a deal, dude. Got a deal.
I need a parahuman ability to rewrite contracts and have people not remember that they changed. That they're like, oh yeah, no, that's what we agreed to.
That
We
would
give
come
you
in handy.
unicorns and rainbows, and then we all jump in the ocean.
There you
The end.
go. Exactly. Good luck with that.
Yeah. All right. For this episode, we will be reviewing Arc 13, Snare, chapters 1 through 4, and the bonus interlude. And as new business, we have two items from YouTube.
Yes, this week we've got a couple of things coming in from two different folks. The first one is from Alex, and Alex's statement in question to us is when Taylor internally thinks she's failed after fighting off Mannequin and thinking that the people looking at her are judging her, that was the moment that it sunk in for me how unreliable a narrator she is. In my reading, they're clearly thankful that she saved them and trying to wrap their heads around the fact that a supervillain risked her life for them. It was from that point forward and during my second reading that I started second guessing a lot of Taylor's characterizations of other characters, wondering if you had a similar view. I'll speak for myself. First off, not being schooled in literature or writing styles or anything like that, I was pretty unfamiliar with the term unreliable narrator. It was something that I discovered listening to the We've Got Worm podcast that the guys from Doof Media did. Those guys much more knowledgeable on and did a deeper dive into technical aspects of Wildbow's writing and stuff, and it was as entertaining and educational for me. Having said that, Andy, what do you think about Alex's question and statement?
I'm embarrassed to say, given that my parents were both educators, my mother was a English lit major, that I was not familiar with the term unreliable narrator either. But that being said, I've never, in fiction, I guess I've never really perceived the main character as a narrator per se. I think of a narrator as someone who is abstracted away from it, who is objective and just looking at it and not really a part of it. So I heard something when I was younger that we can think of ourselves as being kind of three different people. One is the person that we think of ourselves as, one is the person that we actually are, and then one is the way other people perceive us. So there there are the things that go on in our internal dialogue, and especially as a 16-year-old, there are the things that we grapple with and try to understand and don't really have the tools to comprehend. And then there's stuff that we probably hide from people. I remember in school, in high school especially, I was a little bit of a kind of a goody two shoes juvenile delinquent, but I did some stuff. I participated in pranks and I snuck into places I wasn't supposed to be in and that kind of thing. But to all my teachers, I could do no wrong. I was the perfect student. So my perception was that I was a high school 007, whereas everybody else thought of me as just the little angel boy. So I've always viewed Taylor's narration as just her filtering everything through her teenage angst and immaturity, trying to figure stuff out and that kind of thing. So I don't know, maybe because I was also kind of a shy, kind of an outsider type kid. Maybe I was just able to pick up on that. Oh, that's what she's thinking. That's not
Mm-hmm.
what's really happening. So maybe that's why I was able to kind of keep those things separate. And this hasn't been a jarring thing for me. I haven't felt like Taylor's been lying to me, so to speak. It's just her filters on stuff.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Cool. Next, we hear from Megafire 7. Megafire had a reply to our last episode, and I've had to doctor it just a little bit to remove some possible spoilers. So, first, he had a couple of statements. First of all, Megafire was happy that I had asked you that detailed question about Cauldron. Next, he was also pretty happy that you had selected the bushy beard guy as your key character of the arc. And now for the question. I guess now I'm wondering who Andy thinks will be surviving this entire ordeal. Any thoughts?
Well, I have been thinking about this some in relation to a few different things. And I don't, I think at least one of the Undersiders is going to die. I don't know that it's going to be like a direct result of someone succeeding in a test or failing a test with the Slaughterhouse Nine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking it's going to be more, like I'm surprised Skitter survived the first battle against Mannequin. Just being around a wrecking crew like that, and then not only being around, but putting yourself basically your head in the jaw of the lion and saying, "All right, we'll make a deal with you."
Yeah.
Somebody's gonna die. As we see in this episode, there's a lot of people that are totally put in harm's way, and it's just the nature of the conflict. And so I think there's going to be somebody that's kind of collateral damage, if you will. So I don't know. I'm thinking that one for sure will die,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm guessing it's, well, I'm not going to say because we'll keep that under wraps. And I'm
Okay.
two of them might die. So I think, and Telltale almost died.
Yes.
Skitter's almost died, and then we'll see again that more people suffer a lot in this one. So
We've seen that Wildbow is not afraid to strike people down.
that's a great way to put it. Yeah, I remember what a shock it was when I started watching some TV shows from other countries where, our shows typically none of the main characters die. It's always some side character. It's always the away team, like in Star Trek in the old days.
The red shirts.
Don't wear a red shirt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your chance of survival drops precipitously. But watching an Australian show, the first season, one of the main characters died, and my wife and I are just stunned. It's like, well, I thought it was basically her show. What are we going to do now? And each season, it's like the torch passed to some new main character, and
Wow.
it was kind of actually interesting. Because it keeps you a little bit more on the edge of your seat and a little bit more engaged. If there's never this worry that the main characters are going to die, then even if things look horrible, you're like, well, they'll probably be fine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But once you get to that point where one of them dies, and you're like, oh my gosh, what happened? And so I think Wildbow does a good job following in that pattern and keeping us on our toes.
So there is no plot armor to be found here.
No, that's a great way to put it. Yeah, no plot armor. Nobody gets a pass.
Exactly. And with that out of the way, thanks, Alex, and thanks, Megafire, for the questions and comments. And so we will move on to our review for this episode. And we're beginning with chapter 1, when we find Taylor having arrived at Coil's underground base, meeting up with Gru and being given a handout that contains all the terms of engagement set forth by Jack Slash and the rest of the 9. How deep do you want to dive into that? Do you want to just handle that as give an overview of those terms? I know we joked about it earlier in the intro, but you want to dive into that at all?
I don't really think so. I mean, this is definitely dovetails with kind of the mental dialogue that Jack Slash had in the last section, where he's just trying to make it challenging for them and exciting and kind of a chance to lose for his side, if you will, but more of dangling a shred of hope to the other side before the rug pull.
Yeah.
So I don't know that the specifics of the contract are that important. It's just that he's kind of laying out these rules, and as we'll see later, you know, as they say, rules are meant to be broken. So it's an interesting twist, and it provides a framework, but I don't know about the specifics being that important.
Okay. All right. They gather at, as I said, at Coil's base, and we've got the travelers, the undersiders, circus, and we get a first interaction with Tattletale post injury. She's putting up a brave face. I mean, we don't know just how she's doing inside her own head, but she seems to be making do as best she can. Skitter's worried. You can tell.
Well, yeah, she was starting to look up to Tattletale's almost kind of a big sister, and they were pretty close. And it's got to be super hard, for a guy. Scars can kind of be, signs of toughness or whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
for a woman, and especially scars on the face, must just be horribly demoralizing. And yeah, Tattletale's trying to put the best face on it, so to speak. But yeah, I think Skitter's right to be very concerned. That's got to be a huge blow to the psyche to have that happen.
The group gathers and they discuss the terms that Jack set forth. And Skitter asked Tattletale if that was something she hoped Jack would bite on. The idea of making it a little bit of a challenge and making it interesting. She said that that was something that she might was hoping for a little bit. Oh, that was Brian who asked that. Brian says, "So you intended for something like this to happen when you made your suggestion, Tattletale?" Lisa shrugged, sort of. Thought he'd take the bait, didn't know how far. So it from a strategic standpoint, at least this gave them some kind of avenue to possibly have a way out and possibly win.
Yeah, it's kind of like hostage negotiation. You've got the Slaughterhouse House Nine basically holding the whole city hostage, and the Undersiders are kind of the folks on the bullhorn, saying, no, we're not going to give you a helicopter and $10 billion
Mm-hmm.
and extradition, but if you send somebody out, we'll do this. You're trying to buy time, trying to get a dialogue, trying to what's basically like a possibly unbounded chaotic situation to have some boundaries, some structure to it, so that you can make plans. If you don't know if the opponent is coming at you from any of the directions, then how there's no way to be prepared. So at least if you're in that particular kind of mindset, Miyamoto Musashi would disagree.
Hmm.
His plan was that just train the best that you can, because you never know what's going to happen. You just train yourself to be the best you can be, and then stuff's going to happen the way it's going to happen. But they're definitely standard strategists, and so it would totally make sense what they're doing, just trying to set some guidelines, and then yeah, you figure if there are guidelines, that you can find edge cases or ways to possibly turn things to your advantage.
Right, right. they go down the list of who the possible candidates are and discuss the best strategies for dealing inside this set of rules. Coyle points out that Hook Wolf wanted to do an all-out attack. He gathered that information, I'm presuming as part of his own personal undercover operation inside the villain coalition. There was some uncertainty about how the PRT may play in this whole thing. We did find out that Circus, and this goes to diving into a couple of things. Circus was on another mission, sounded like similar, well, maybe not, we don't know exactly, a mission for Coyle. Coyle had commented that he pulled her out of the field because he didn't want her to suffer the same fate as poor Trainwreck did.
Right.
We do get the discussions about splitting the groups up, which I know had to set your hair on fire. And then finally, we have Imp and Gru having a knockdown drag out. You wanna handle those topics?
Sure. Yeah. The Imp interaction with Gru I thought was very interesting. Imp's power, as we'll see in the coming sections, is very interesting and could be a huge advantage in a lot of ways. But because she's the little sister and Gru is her, you know, rescuer or protector from the horrible home life, that makes it very difficult for him to allow her to kind of really utilize her powers and really kind of become a fully functioning member. You know, he's handling her with kid gloves, as we all have with siblings, you know, that we've tried to keep safe
Sure.
and give the benefit of our experience, you know, especially our younger siblings. And
Yeah, I was
so,
gonna say, being a couple of big brothers to younger sisters, I'm sure we put that flex out there on occasion when
oh,
we were younger.
for sure. Yeah. It's, you know, when you're at that age, when you're, you know, less than like 25,
Mm-hmm.
a year can make such a huge difference in life experience and learning to navigate things. And as we gain that experience, we want to try to help people to avoid making the mistakes or avoid the pain that we went through, not realizing that sometimes the only way to really learn is to go through it,
Yeah.
whether it's pleasant or not. So there's a huge tension there where the younger siblings wanting to try things out, wanting to test themselves, so to speak, push the limits a little bit. And the older siblings, like, I did that. It sucked really bad. So I'm telling you that maybe that's not good. And, you know, 9 times out of 10, the younger sibling doesn't want to hear it.
Right.
So
And that was the case here. Imp is
big
feeling,
time. Yeah.
yeah, stop leaning on me. Why you holding me down? I got a good power. I can be useful. She just was not standing for any of Brian's. And you know, well, I don't think Brian was being unreasonable. I mean, uh,
This is the Slaughterhouse 9. I mean,
yeah,
if it were my little sister, I would put her in a container, put her on a ship, and send her overseas or something. It'd be like, I don't even want you anywhere around this. I don't care how powerful you are. This is just too messed up. But
yeah.
you know, I'm not parahuman, so what do I know?
And what about your opinion of them deciding to split up into groups?
That's a tough choice. I get where they're coming from with that, and you know, if you again looking at strategy things, there's some benefits to that, right? You don't want all your eggs in one basket. You know, a so-called nuclear strike or whatever takes out everybody. So splitting up helps from that sense. But then, you know, thinking back to Scooby Doo,
Yeah, I was waiting for you
when
to
you
go
split
there.
up, you know, it's like, what you gonna do now? You done dropped your pistol when you bust through the window.
There you
You
go.
know, it's
Exactly.
you don't want to be going off by yourself because that's when the hand comes out from the secret door and pulls you into the the passage, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely got its risks, but they've got a lot of ground to cover. They have a lot of unknowns still out there they're trying to figure out, and they're just doing the best they can to cover their bases and also try to prepare for the possibility that if one group gets hit, there another group will be protected. So it's a horrible choice to have, but I understand where they're coming from.
Let's touch briefly before we move uh, out of this chapter. Let's touch briefly on the Noelle situation. Skitter asked about whether or not she'd be safe in that containment, that room that she's in, and they talked about how. Let's see here if I can find this. Skitter says, so she's dangerous and she's not entirely in control of her power. And regarding Trickster, he tilted his chair forward until it laid flat on the ground, his elbows set on the table. He glanced down, skipping ahead, he glanced down the table at his teammates. I wasn't sure, but I thought maybe he glanced briefly at Coyle. With a resigned tone, he told us she's dangerous enough that if Siberian got to her, I think she'd make it out okay. The rest of us wouldn't. That's fairly interesting and ominous, wouldn't you say?
I firmly agree with that, and I really like the way Skitter kind of harkens back then to Sundancer and how some powers have to be contained or constrained, or they risk a lot of collateral damage. So I think back to the old idea of a berserker from Norse mythology, where there were certain warriors that could become killing machines, and the problem was that they wouldn't when the red haze went over their eyes, so to speak, they couldn't tell friend from foe. They would just kill everybody. And so that's kind of the sense I get from Noelle, is that she just become kind of a killing machine at that point. And it seems like Trickster at least feels like he'd be able to try to keep her from totally going off the hook. But the whole group seems to be worried about her potential for destruction.
Yeah, there is something that the travelers, for their reasons known only to them and possibly Coyle, there's something there that they are keeping under the table, close to the vest, so to speak. And we don't want to forget the encounter last arc where Trickster had asked Tattletale to lie to Noelle. So there's something we're not privy to at this moment. Moving toward the end of the chapter, that's where Gru and Imp have that confrontation, and Imp is like, you know what? I've had enough of this, and power kicks on, and she's like, I'm out of here. And poor Gru, he stands up, is about to say something, and everybody's sitting around the table wondering, what are you standing up for? And he kind of tentatively looks around, embarrassed, and sits back down. That's got to be that's got to be frustrating.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's I was trying to think. I know they've done similar things in movies where it's like someone is interacting with a ghost or an invisible person, and they jump around and do things, and everybody's like, what's going on? But in this case, stuff happens that everybody's privy to, but then they all forget it ever happened.
Right.
And so then they're in the midst of stuff and they're like, what's going on? And so I like Tattletale's idea of trying to have cameras in everybody's helmets so they can scroll back and like, oh, that's where I was standing. Imp was here.
Right. So the gathered group, they come up with a plan. They decide how they're going to divide their forces, and they head off. Skitter and Bitch and Gru or make their way over to Skitter's territory to grab a few things to do a quick assessment. Genesis is with their group, and we'll touch on her when we get a little bit further. I think it's toward chapter 4, so we can go into detail about her then. We find out as we're moving into chapter 2, we find out that that Panacea is no longer living at home. Tattletale's spies have gone out and about and gotten word back to her that she's living in a shelter. Skitter and Gru and company decide to head on over to there. And then we have that whole conversation where that conversation between Skitter and Panacea. Panacea is still going through it.
She's had a tough time for sure. And it's one of those things where someone's worst nightmares have kind of come true. And so not only is she aware of that, but now she knows that some of the worst people on the planet are aware of it. And they're like, you're cool. You should join us. And so it just kind of confirms all of her worst fears. So she's just trying to hide out and come to grips with things. I can't even imagine what must be going through her mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then they the Undersiders figure out where she is, and so they go to try to talk to her.
Yeah, I do like the point where Skitters realizes where she is. She locates her because one of her insects happens to brush against Panacea, and Panacea sets up that feedback loop, and immediately Skitter sends in dragonflies to kill every bug that happened to be in the area to keep her from becoming debilitated again.
Right.
Smart move because because the first time was extremely painful. Also on the ride, before they actually get to Panacea, Bitch and Gru and Skitter try to talk to, cajole Bitch into trying to get an assessment of where she is and try to deal with the fact that the tension is causing problems in the group, that they're not going to be able to function efficiently if she's being more standoffish than normal.
Yeah, she's really having a hard time, I think, Bitch that is, from all that's going on. And she wasn't the most socially adept person to begin with. So she's even more isolated and less talkative. And with everything going on, that's kind of the exact opposite of what the team needs. They need her engaged, and they need her trying to actively help out, and they need to know they can count on her. And right now it's like, all right, she was nominated. Where does she stand on that? Are we harboring somebody amongst us that's going to turn on us because that'll work to her advantage? And so, yeah, they've got to try to figure out what's going on and try to get on the same page with her.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those times where I desperately wished to be able to know what's going on inside her head, because she's who she is, and as you said, she's not socially adept. Is there an inner turmoil? Is there an anguish that she's just not able to deal with? Is she thinking about leaving the group, or is she wrestling with trying to figure out how to stay if they mean her ill?
Yeah, and I keep thinking back to the gift from Siberia and how that was kind of the perfect bait. Bitch connects better with dogs, and has a better rapport with them, understands them better. And here she's given like a dog archetype, if you will, a wolf puppy that's going to be bonding to her, and it has none of the drawbacks of the domesticated dog as far as from the standpoint of being like a pure hunter, or isn't tainted by humanity, if you will, like a dog is.
Right.
And so it could be acting on bitch at even a subconscious level, that just that, and they touched on that when she got her, that it was even easier. There was less resistance in trying to exert her power on the wolf pup than on a dog. And so how exciting that would be to somebody with parahuman powers, to find that, oh, here's the path of least resistance, and then that's connected to the Slaughterhouse-9. That's how I got this, and so
Mm.
it could be an even better thing, who knows what is available. Yeah, so it's and yeah, she doesn't even have kind of the mental strategies to be able to work stuff out. She's definitely just like a fight or flight type of reactionary creature. And so it's very hard for her, I think, to even find out how to bring her intellectual power to bear on this problem. It's too hard to think about, kind of.
Okay, let's jump back to the situation with Panacea. So this poor confused girl, she's not even really fully apprised of what the situation is with the nine. All she knows is that Bonesaw, in her twisted way, wants her to join the team, and Skitter gives her the complete lowdown on the situation and her possible role in it and why she can't leave the city. Skitter is walking a tightrope, trying to recruit Panacea, at the same time trying not to overstep any boundaries, and um, I mean, doing so pretty well, I think, for Skitter. If we think about Taylor Hebert back in Arc 1, Arc 2, could she have carried out this kind of an effort to connect with somebody back then?
No, I don't think so. And I think Taylor even doubted she could do it. She really kind of lobbied Taylor or Tattletale to try to get somebody else to go talk to Panacea
Yeah.
because of their history. But Tattletale reminded her that her own history with Panacea was even worse, and that Panacea might not even talk to other folks that might be available because they had no connection. So Taylor finally realizes that she's the only person for the job, so to speak, and then makes the best of it, which is, yeah, definitely to her credit. It shows how she's matured.
Um, when Skitter tells Panacea the list of the rest of the people who've been might be recruited by the nine, she mentions Arms Master, to which Amy says, "Yeah, I can kind of see it. He stepped over the line during the Endbringer attack. I mean, everybody believes that to be the case."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they also point out that it might be more to mess with Arms Master than to actually think that he would join them.
Right.
And that's legit too. The whole kind of limitless ambition that he had that caused him
Mm-hmm.
to kind of overstep is something that they can kind of stick the knife in a little bit and twist. And if he was a legitimate opponent that could have somehow helped to stop the nine, then by putting him on the candidate list, they've kind of eliminated that threat because he's going to be too busy trying to prove to himself that he's not that kind of person.
Right. We find out also during this conversation between the two girls that whole thing inside the triage center during the Endbringer attack, where Panacea was messing with Skitter's head, that ended up being a whole thing. The Legend and Miss Militia, the director of the PRT, they all came to her house, and sounds like the folks from New Wave got kind of, well, I won't say chewed out, but certainly told that what she did was not advisable.
And it's tough. They don't really know what Panacea was going through, and because of the position of the new wave folks, the protectorate's got to sometimes probably be a little heavy-handed, because they're mercenaries, if you will, kind of, just
Yeah, they're not
a
under
little
their
bit out.
umbrella.
Right. And so they've got to, nip anything in the bud that looks like it's going to cast a bad light on the superheroes. So, but to somebody like Panacea, that must have felt extra horrible. And then, you know, it it uh, it also upset her family or adopted family, which was
Mm-hmm.
a sore point. So, yeah, that must have been really hard on her and just more fuel to the fire of her doubting herself and her place in the community.
As they're having this talk, and it seems like that Skitter is making headway there. At least, at least Amy hasn't run off, but she doesn't get the chance to close the deal with Panacea because Mannequin shows back up, grabs her around the throat, and that whole there's another visual bit of writing from Wildbow, the hand grabbing Skitter around the throat, him dropping to the ground with her as a counterbalance, and then
Mm.
attacking Panacea. Just wow.
I could totally picture it. I agree. One last thing on Panacea, though, in
Sure.
relation to the comment we talked about, unreliable narrator. I think this is another example where Panacea to the outside world has been a huge help. Has healed countless people, has worked tirelessly.
Mm-hmm.
But on the inside, she shares how it's made her feel and how, rather than her feeling like I'm giving back and this is wonderful, it's better to give than to receive. It's like it's this crushing responsibility, and she's just and she's always had these doubts about herself, and then stuff keeps coming up that just proves the doubts were true, to her. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's just another example of how the internal dialogue and the internal picture of the person can differ so much from the external, and the behavior can be a big mismatch with what the person's actually feeling. And so, just another example of how someone in a similar position
Mm-hmm.
can really be beating themselves up. Uh, and so I think Taylor's getting through, but it can be really hard. If a person is introspective at all and is trying to be honest with themselves, then it's easy to get in a position of where I'm the expert on me. Everybody else is just seeing what I want them to see. And
Mm-hmm.
so, you can all say whatever you want, but I know the truth because I'm in here. And what it finally took for me to realize, it was one of my really good friends said to me point blank, well, do you respect me? Do you like me? And I said, oh, definitely. And they said, well, how about people like Keith or other people? And I said, oh, totally. Yeah. And he said, and this friend of mine said, well, don't you think that it's pretty unlikely that all of us could be wrong and you really suck as bad as you seem to think you do? And it was kind of like, oh, yeah, that's a great
Yeah.
point. I mean, sure, we've all got our own theory of how where we are or
Mm-hmm.
how mature we are or whatever, how good a person we are. Um, and we think we're an expert on that. But if you line up all the people that you really respect and they seem really cool and they think the world of you, then maybe you've got to reevaluate.
Mm-hmm.
But it's super hard to do when you're that age,
Yeah.
17 to 20, and you're always looking at the faults and how, wow, I wish I was taller, I wish I was faster, whatever. I wish I didn't say so many stupid things. And so it's it's really hard. So I think Taylor's making some headway, probably because she can empathize,
Yeah.
uh, but it's a tough nut to crack because we all think we're the experts of ourselves at that age.
Yeah. And then when Mannequin shows up, um stencils or staples poor Panacea to a wall with a knife.
Mm-hmm.
Oh dear. Ends up killing one of bitch's dogs, Lucy. Oh jeez.
Oh man. Yeah.
Yeah, this whole scene, let's we don't have to go specifics into this fight, but and you can pull out different confrontations within the whole battle if you'd like and talk about them. So we can combine, oh, actually, you know what? Let me stop myself because we move into the bonus interlude, Aisha, before we get into the rest of the battle. We discover the more details about the sad life of Aisha Laborn before and then after, I guess, the trigger event. Brian was definitely doing the right thing, trying to get her away from their mom.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah, that just sounded like a rat hole. And I was just talking to another person about this today. When we're kids, we look at our parents, we're like, oh my gosh, how can they be making these mistakes? They're adults. What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And then we become adults and have kids, and we're like, oh my gosh, how did I not end up even more messed up than I am?
Right.
Because being a parent is super hard. And so for somebody though who's been in bad situations as a kid and suffered abuse probably, or at least neglect, you can end up being a flawed parent from the beginning. You haven't seen things modeled, and so then when it's your turn to be a parent, you think it's okay to, if you just leave the kid in the house when they're 7 and you go off and go to a party or whatever. It's just all sorts of stuff that other people will be like, no, that's not okay. So yeah, Aisha's even in a worse situation than that with drugs involved. And Brian definitely did the right thing trying to save her. But just to jump back to the battle for a second,
Sure.
I thought it was pretty cool the way Skitter detected that there were changes to Mannequin.
Mm-hmm.
That his balance was a little bit different, his stance was a little bit different, and so I thought that was pretty neat. And also that in spite of everything, and I guess this is probably just Mannequin's pride, but he had fought Skitter toe to toe with the help of the bushy beard guy, and he'd come off the worst for wear, and now he's willing to take on Gru, Bitch, the dogs, Skitter, and Panacea. So I don't know, he must think an awful lot of his enhancements that he's created.
Because being one of the smartest tinkers on the planet, you could just imagine that he wasn't going to come back with that same body, and so we're not surprised that he's definitely got some mods and upped his game.
And he's also come up with some strategies, some ways to try to tip things to his advantage. So yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, Wildbow certainly wouldn't bring this character back into the fray, not having done some improvements on him. On this character, I can definitely say that I would have been surprised had it been the other way. Had he just showed up with replacement arms and he was just like he used to be, and not been this amped up image of himself.
I just assumed that, and I guess this is me being more of a lawful good character than a chaotic evil character, that he would have retreated and been a cautious aggressor rather than trying to augment and then just come in twice as hard. But yeah, like I said, I think it's just a blind spot for me that I don't think the way these folks think.
Did you have anything else you wanted to touch on that particular chapter before we back into the interlude?
Just that it seems like there's people have been given their deadlines, if you will, of when the testing is going to happen. So I thought that was another way Wildbow is showing that the Slaughterhouse Nine are trying to abide by the contract, that they're alerting them that this is when it's starting, and that kind
Hmm.
of thing. So they're keeping up the appearances, at least, that they're negotiating in good faith.
Yeah, at least for this 5 minutes, anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, we can move on to the next chapter or the interlude.
All right. So we discover this is another one of those sections where, or one of those times where you don't know exactly what the scenario is
Mm,
initially.
yeah.
We're introduced to these people. They're not good, and then at some point we find out whose interlude this is, and the person is. It's made clear. Oh, okay, this is Alicia's interlude, and this is what her home life was. She finds out that her mom is pregnant again. She's embarrassed and disgusted by that, and we get a look at how her power affects non-parahuman people. It's not just parahumans that are affected by her power.
Right. Yeah. It's this blanket effect that occurs around her, and almost without her conscious control. It's just kind of that way. But yeah, this was a really hard interlude to read at the beginning. Just to,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know that people are in all sorts of horrible situations all over the world all the time, but we all have our own lives, and we tend to not dwell on the folks suffering in the Ukraine in the winter, or the folks in a refugee camp in Syria,
Sure.
or you name the bad part of the world that's struggling right now, or even our own country.
Mm-hmm.
Could be somebody across the street. But to read it like this is just really gritty. It's really it was rough for me to picture this. Wildbow does a great job describing things, and I felt like I was just looking at something I really didn't want to ever see.
Yeah, it was an open wound.
Hmm.
Um,
That's a
uh,
great way to put it. Yeah.
on this character, this young girl. But as readers, yeah, it's just an open wound, and you can see that, and it gives depth to. This was a good way to give depth to Aisha. She's not just an annoying, bratty, um, uncontrollable little sister. We see what's driven her, and she does, in her own way, have a purpose. We do get, before you respond to that, we do get some information here. We find out that the drugs that they have, they got from that last merchant party where everybody
Oh my
got
gosh.
the ultimate in party crashers from the nine, and then these guys, Aisha's mom and her friends, one of her friends, carted away some of the drugs, and that's how they ended up with all this. But to the point about Aisha, what do you think about that? The depth that Wildbow has given her here.
I hadn't thought about it from that aspect, but that's a great way to put it. And I think it's also interesting. It seems like Wildbow is implying that Aisha was kind of invisible in her mom's life before the trigger event. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's almost like her power is just an augmentation of how she was already feeling. And we saw kind of that described in the cauldron section, where the person administering the drug was saying you got to be sure that you're trying not to be in a bad headspace, because that could make things go the wrong way.
Right.
And so Aisha was feeling like she was invisible and forgettable, and there must be something about her And now that she's a parahuman, people can't remember it at all. So
something about her mental state and something somehow affected. There's some correlation between her mental state and the trigger event. Oh yeah, I guess so. I mean, that's, as you were just saying, that's kind of what the doctor was telling Jamie about during that interlude. This
exactly, yeah,
further confirmation of that for you.
yeah, yeah, and I think it opens up some interesting paths for exploration. Well, what about Taylor's power relates to that, or some of the other folks, and so my part of my brain that's always trying to figure things out or guess where things are going now has got a whole new field of exploration. So watch out, everybody. I might be going way off the deep end any minute.
Oh, that's gonna be fun. That's gonna be fun.
You've seen that before, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So Aisha is doing some self-reflection, as you were saying, about her own life being invisible to her mom even prior to the trigger event. And she thinks about how her power functions, and as you said, points out that it's not invisibility so much as it's somehow it affects memories. And even when she's not trying to think about it, she can feel her power on its own doing something. And the moment that she does try to glimpse at that shadow, then that slips away from her.
Yeah, and to me that harkened back to, I believe it was Fault Line trying to figure out how to,
Oh yeah,
that
the
there were
Manton
certain
effect.
restrictions. Exactly, the Manton effect. So if you're a kid and people don't seem to remember you or you seem invisible to them, then you immediately think that there's something wrong with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
because it can't be everybody else. There's got to be something wrong with you. And so kids can build up all sorts of, stuff that's way off just because they don't understand what's going on. So extrapolating on this, you could imagine that, kind of along the lines of it's a wonderful life, well, maybe it's better if
Mm.
I never existed. And
Mm-hmm.
so I wonder if Aisha's ultimate power could be that she could erase any memory of her existence from people's minds, but that would, kind of be along the lines of what happened with Panacea or whatever, and also the Manton effect, where she's going too far. It's part of her core ethical nature is telling her power that no, that's not okay.
I
I
see.
can't just I can't brain white people, that's. And so when she takes a minute to look at that consciously, then that retreats back. But she can detect that there's something more there that could be going on. I'm just theorizing
Mm-hmm.
at this
Mm-hmm.
point.
Cool. And she sees what her mom's pregnancy could mean, what it
Mm.
could mean for the kid, the possible sibling, what it could mean for Brian, and again, she's not just a one dimensional or two dimensional character here. She's got compassion. She ends up being, she recognizes her own possible ADHD issues because of
Mm.
her mom's drug use. Um, I was actually kind of impressed with her detective ability as she after she finishes gathering up whatever supplies she needed at her home, and then I guess bidding a final farewell, she goes off and tries to do some detective work trying to locate the nine.
Yeah, and I think about that a lot when I watch different kinds of shows, uh, that streaming allows us to just binge stuff. It feels like, yeah, I bet I could crack a safe if I had to. I've watched enough episodes of that,
Yeah.
and so you watch enough crime shows, and it's kind of the basic thing. You look around at things, you try to picture what might have happened, you try not to disturb anything because you don't know what might be a clue,
Mm-hmm.
and you look for things that are out of place. And yeah, she's checking around and detects that, oh wait, this blood in this area is a different pattern.
Right.
It's all pattern recognition stuff. And so then she starts following that down the trail. One last thing though was I like the way she tried to get her mom to stop,
Yeah.
and really tried to advocate for the unborn, if you
Hmm.
will. And it's pretty ineffective, but she did give it a good try, I thought, because yeah, she knows how she suffered, and she doesn't want any possible siblings to go through that or worse.
Right. Right. She finds the nine.
Oh
And
my gosh.
yeah, dude.
Why would you look for these people?
I mean, at this point, it doesn't come off of it does not come off as I'll show you, Brian. I mean, she's trying to accomplish a task. She is trying to help the team. This is highly ill advised because she doesn't know whether or not one of the members there could find her, could locate her or whatever. But she does it anyway. She finds the nine and she assaults Bonesaw.
Yeah, I think if she had been, it was just being upset and I'll show Brian kind of thing, she would have just rushed into it headlong. But she's very methodical.
Right.
She plans it out. She doesn't rush in, and so I think you're right there that she's trying to be grown up about it, if you will, and trying to utilize her powers to help everybody and not endanger anything. But
It's
then,
Let me
yeah,
ask you this.
the
Was
horror.
was
Yeah.
Skitter right in the argument she made to Imp prior to Imp bailing on him, and saying, "Hey, look, I mean, I think this interlude proves her value, and I think Skitter was right in saying, hey, we could use you better helping us with our defense."
Yes, I agree on both points. The hard part is, it's like having a rookie on your team in a skill position. You know that they have the physical abilities. You know that what you've seen in practice, but it's a whole nother thing in the game. And
Right.
when you get that first, knock in the head, you don't know how people are going to react until it's happened. And so Skitter and Imp are coming at it from the standpoint of, well, give me a shot. Let's try it, see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Brian's coming at it from, well, yeah, maybe we can give it a shot with the weakest team in the division rather than last year's champions.
Right.
We don't put you up against the guy who's going to a D1 school next year. We put you in against, as my dad used to say, Our Lady of the Little Sisters of the Poor.
Sure.
um, and you get hit, but you don't get hit by a ton of bricks.
Right.
So they both have valid points, but you don't know at the end of the day until you try. But yeah, Aisha sees the horror in front of her, and then she does kind of act in a irresponsible way.
Yeah. Ooh, jeez. Again, Wildbow doling out a pretty hefty dose of body horror when it comes to
Mm.
the surgery that Bonesaw was conducting on the kitchen table. Ugh.
Yeah, and I think he did a great job of capturing how hard it would be for the mind to go there of any sane person.
Right.
It's like, where's the sound coming from? It's got to be from over there or her or that or that. It
Mm-hmm.
can't be, oh my gosh, that
Exactly.
guy's
Yeah.
still alive. And so I thought the way he wrote that was excellent.
Because yeah, Aisha Imp is hesitant, as any, as you said, sane person would be. Oh, gosh, this is a kid. I haven't killed anybody before. These people are monsters, but this is a kid, and oh my God, she's got his beating heart in her hands. Oh geez, and then the reflexive, yeah, I'm sorry, kid, you got to die, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of like, all right, I know you're a messed up person and everything, and you probably deserve to die, but I'm not a murderer. oh, wait, you're actively killing someone. I have to try to stop that. So,
Yeah. But it doesn't work. We find out. Well, the good news is nobody in the room, Shatterbird or Crawler, or nobody can see her or realize she's there. Fortunately, Crawler can't smell her. But we find out, it sounds like, that Bonesaw has done body augmentations to the non-invulnerable members of the Nine.
I thought that was really cool. And just to drop another Zelazny tidbit with you, it reminded me of a section from a book called Lord of Light, which is one that won the Hugo and the Nebula. And it's about a group of people who are colonizers of another planet, and the people that wake up first from the cold sleep decide to set themselves up via technology and augmentation as kind of like gods of this world.
Oh.
And then they wake everybody else up. But one of the people is, I forget, he's kind of like a tinker. They all are. I mean, they've got all this super technology, but he has this liquid that can basically make flesh into almost like a petrified wood kind of thing. Like it still works as flesh, but it's invulnerable.
Oh, wow.
And so there's this great fight where one of the gods sends this assassin who's been augmented this way to take out another one of the gods, and the god's fighting with this guy, and it's a martial arts kind of thing, and he chops him with what should be a killing blow to the throat, but the guy's had his throat treated in kind of the same sheath method. And the guy just, gets knocked back, but he's not dead, and he keeps coming. And so it's this process of, well, what parts of him are vulnerable?
Yeah.
What parts, because the deal was you couldn't cover the whole body in this, or then the body wouldn't work right. And that's kind of what Wildbow's implying, is that these sheaths are around vital organs. And so, you can stab the eye, which is pretty vital, but it's not a killing blow. But getting to the brain behind it would be. So that must be sheathed and protected. And so I just thought that was a cool harken back to something I'd read a long time ago.
She tries to stab, and as you said, nothing happens. Pardon me. Bonesaw feels the pain. And the rest of the team stands up and tries to figure out what's going on. They discuss making a break for it and torching the room, and then they decide that that's not necessary. And part of the problem would have been that the Cherish can't find Mannequin, or has trouble following Mannequin, so he wouldn't be able to reconnect with the group. Aisha, or Imp, leaves the room. And as she's exiting, she runs into Jack and Cherish.
Literally.
Yeah. Jack has no idea she's there. That was frightening as all get out.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. I thought for sure somehow maybe Jack wouldn't know, but his knives would somehow, or something.
Sure. I mean, at this
major
point,
clench point right there.
Exactly. We don't know what's going on at this point. If he's capable of somehow sensing her. Jack isn't, but Cherish is. Now that was a surprise.
Oh, I figured since she had stumped everybody else, and Wildbow made the point of kind of leading us down that path that, Crawler couldn't smell her, and so she's like, okay, cool, and even with all the augmentation, Bonesaw didn't know what was going on, just that she'd been attacked somehow. And then all of a sudden, there's this bomb drop that Cherish can detect the emotions, though, and knows there's somebody there and wants to team up with her.
Surprise. Because perhaps Cherish, well, you know what? No, it's a good question, but I better not ask it. All right, so
Cherish is in a horrible position. I mean, she's definitely got the sword of Damocles hanging over her. She thought she was playing everybody, and she was getting played. And they're like, "Well, we'll let you stick around, but we'll probably kill you at some point in the near future." And so she's just grasping at straws. She's looking for anything. So I'm sure she's just ecstatic that there's a chance here,
Mm-hmm.
that she has somebody that can be her ace in the hole.
Yep. We'll see what happens with that. Now back to moving on to chapter 3 and back to the meat of the fight. Mannequin does get the better of them. Kills Lucy, as we said, impales Panacea's hand to the wall, and then beats a hasty retreat over to Skitter's territory, where he begins gassing people. There's more death. The fight that they get into, Skitter determines, actually, after guesses that gas is volatile. That whole situation, it was tough. It was tough for them to deal with.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to how much Mannequin underestimated Skitter the first time, that she almost took him out by herself.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's beefed up and come up with new strategies and is more on the offensive and is able to take on, Gru and Bitch and the dogs and Skitter and Genesis, and is just going all out and making it look like he's going to just wreck everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, the issue with the her figuring out that the gas must be flammable. Good job on Skitter's part. This whole scenario, it's been a while since we'd seen Skitter put on her battlefield commander in such a dire situation, or her battlefield commander hat, and she rises to the occasion and comes up with a way to at least throw him off his feet until Burnscar shows up.
Yeah, it's just another one of those occasions where just when you think they're starting to get the upper hand, then somebody comes in and breaks the rules, and we get back to that not negotiating a good faith thing.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh no, yeah, that was breaking the rules, but now I'm tagged in, so now it's not breaking the rules anymore. And it's like, what?
Yeah, I mean, just some sick, twisted WWE thing. Yeah. Okay, tag, I'm in now. And now it's my turn, and things just get even more terrifying, as if the ceramic encased sword wielding psychopath wasn't bad enough. Now they've got to contend with the Burnscar and her ability not just to control flame but to travel through flame.
Yeah, that's and Genesis kind of touches on it, that she created an avatar or an entity that would deal with Mannequin and the stuff that he could do. And then, yeah, Burnscar shows up and she's like, I can't deal with any of this. I couldn't prepare for that. So,
right. Again, not making it easy. Sure, Genesis can generate these avatars or creatures, however you want to phrase it, but she had come up with a form specific for dealing with Mannequin. Burnscar was there. Okay, well, that's not a form. I mean, while the form wasn't couldn't be damaged, it wasn't one fit for dealing a blow to Burnscar. Once again, it seems realistic, and in that nobody's invincible. You've got to be strategic in the use of your power as a cape in this world.
Exactly. Yeah. Nobody likes if every parahuman is like Superman.
Right.
And, it's just that Deus Ex Machina, there's the machine of God. It's just, you wave a wand and everything works out the way you want. That's not engaging literature. You want people that have limitations and weaknesses and situations where those things come to light or are an important part of it. That's what makes it more readable, more engaging, and more realistic, right? Where none of us are good at everything. We all have our own limitations, and so we can relate to it when stuff that's kind of unrelatable, people with superpowers aren't invincible. So,
yeah, it turns out that Mannequin does poison with his gas. Quite a few people in her territory, and I think I had forgotten in my first read that part of the deal with Mannequin was the fact that Skitter had been making lives better for people, and that was part of what drove him to attack her. And then the second time around was, well, now I'm just mad, and I'm really going to make you pay and bring down your entire area. So that was something that I picked up on this second read. I Jesus, the burn scar thing though. I mean, she burned. She got burned. She and Groot really got injured trying to walk through or run through those flames. Her suit's not fireproof. Sure, it can blunt to a certain extent a slicing attack, but it ain't fireproof.
And we've all seen, spider webs burn at various
Sure.
times. So, yeah, they go up pretty quick. And even with whatever Skitter's done to them, they're not going to be fireproof. So that's totally legit. And it's just the shock of it too. You feel like you're making headway and stuff, and then this kind of rogue wave comes from a different direction, and now all of a sudden the stuff that you had ready to go, it doesn't count anymore. And we've all had that going back to sports.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at the people coming at you and you're preparing to get hit, and then you get blindsided, and it's just like it
Oh,
hurts. It
that's
hurts
never
that much
fun.
more because your body's prepped for an attack from one direction, and you get blasted from some other direction. So yeah, it really does a great job in the book, the story of describing the pain they're going through, and the disorientation, how
Mm-hmm.
she ends up trying to kind of fight almost with Brian because he's trying to put her out or trying to cool her off. And she's just like, I can't handle it. So
Yeah.
I thought that was well written there.
I get one of those fist pumping moments when during the fight, pardon me, bitch pumped up bastard, and
Mm.
he jumped on Mannequin and bit his arm and broke it, and I was like, yes.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I was really hoping, and like I said, things looked to be in pretty good shape then because Sirius, I think, is able to join in. They're about to drop a giant chunk of rock on him. Groot is
Mm-hmm.
ready to crush Mannequin's chest, and then the tables are turned once again. So, but yeah, I was cheering definitely.
So as they end up surviving the fight and escaping and limping on to Skitter's territory, we're moving into chapter 4 here. Oh, let's not let me not skip past the test that Burnscar delivers to Bitch. And Bitch's test from Burnscar is to kill members of the Undersiders.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, Skitter's freaked out because she thinks that Bitch is actually considering it.
Yeah, and I don't blame Skitter. I mean, the way bitch acts sometimes, and how she fought her from like the moment they met. You wonder what kind of checks and balances bitch has in her inner equations.
Mm-hmm.
What if it's my pack or your pack? Well, my pack's got to survive, not yours, kind of thing. And bitch's pack, it seems like, is her dogs.
Right.
She has tried to make connections with people. Sometimes it goes okay, most of the time it doesn't, and most of the time it doesn't make any sense to her why it doesn't. And yes, it hurts, but if
Well, she
people
knows
keep
her dogs love her unconditionally, and there's never any mind games going on in that relationship.
exactly, yeah, they're much more straightforward. She loves them, they love her, they follow her, they do it what they're told, they react the way she expects them to
Right.
react. And people aren't like that at all. And she doesn't, it's hard for her to comprehend what goes on with people and why they, one minute Skitter is trying to help her out and helping her with the stray dogs. And then the next minute she's revealed as betraying the whole group. And so it's just, it'd be like having a dog in your pack that had rabies or something. You have no idea what they're going to do. So if I need to kill it to protect the rest of us, well, I guess that's an option. I'm not taking it off the table, you know.
Right, right. So the Undersiders do manage to beat a hasty retreat to escape, and that's when they head on back to Skitter's territory, and they get into her lair, and they find who's there with the kids. Is it Sierra? I forget. It's Sierra. Charlotte. So, yeah. Okay. Charlotte's there with the kids who are probably now orphans from people who died in the attack from Mannequin, as well as Genesis. And we find that that Genesis is actually a young lady who's wheelchair bound.
That's a very interesting twist. Yeah, I didn't expect that, and it definitely complicates things. You know, if they're going to have to be on the run and have to relocate, the world's not built for people who need special access.
Right.
And so that's definitely going to add to the challenge of escape. But, you know, it seems like Charlotte and Sierra definitely took Skitter's warnings to heart and did the best they could, trying to separate folks, trying to get them to safe places. And so it's good to see that they're reacting so well.
They're turning out to be a couple of strong lieutenants for her.
Yeah, and I think that is indicative of how Skitter is modeling that stuff to them. You know, these two young women weren't necessarily the kind of people that had seen a lot of that, but now they have seen it. You know, this is someone that's basically their age who is, you know, going toe to toe with these supervillains, and they're saying, well, you know, she's no older than I am. And we can all remember that from when we were that age, you know, that there'd be certain things to be like, nah, there's no way I can do that. And then, you know, whether it be something in PE where you had to do a certain number of push-ups, or, you know, taking the SATs or whatever. And then somebody else that, you know, that is, you know, you think you're kind of in the same league as them, they got through it. Then you're like,
sure.
Oh, all right, well, I can do this too. So, but it's cool to see that they're, yeah, like you said, being such good lieutenants.
After they begin to mend their wounds, this is where Skitter, I don't want to say she wasn't hysterical, but she certainly
she almost gives in to despair. She's just, it's like hopelessness, you know. She's there's no way to win this. We're all going to get toast.
So. Right. At first, she just wants to go out and just fight them. They're just bullies, she says. Again, hearkening back to something that was a primary focus at the very early part of this story was bullying, and this is what she refers to the 9 as. They're just bullies, and they just need to be dealt with. Brian has to physically stop her. And after a few moments, she climbs down off the ledge. Genesis comes back from her coma state, I guess, as she put it, to when she uses her power, she goes to sleep, and she's the only person who can wake herself. And Skitter, being in a little bit better headspace, begins to say, hey, we need to take the fight to these guys because we're not going to manage to make it all the way through.
Yeah. It reminded me of a book series I read called, and I don't think this was the name of it, but the term they used was using an oblique approach.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea was, you know, if the rules of the game are such that you can't win, then you got to change the rules.
Right.
You got to do something unexpected. So I think almost like in your coaching days, where kids at the age you're coaching really aren't in a position to be able to throw the ball very well, or to, you know, be super accurate with passes, super accurate with running routes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's do more running backs, basically. You know, let's do the stuff that people are going to have a better chance of success at, and that's going to be a wrinkle that's going to be hard for people to figure out how to stop. And so, you know, a modern example of that, I guess, would be kind of like the jet sweep in the NFL. You know, you You've got a person who's got blazing speed. Well, let's try to just hand the ball to them on it looks like they're going in motion, and instead they're just really running a sweep.
Yeah.
And that often catches people off guard. So you're doing something, you're attacking on the edges. You're going away from the strength. So it looks like she's trying to do that, and she's saying, hey, if they're gonna fight dirty, we got to fight dirty too. You got to fight fire with fire sometimes. So
Right. And Gru tries to, that was where Gru once again points out the fact that, hey, you do remember what Dinah said about us in direct attack. And that's where Battlefield Commander Skitter says, so we do, as you said, an indirect attack, and we play dirty and give ourselves a chance to survive this thing.
It kind of reminded me of can't think Speed. You remember that movie with Keanu Reeves?
Yeah.
And Sandra Bullock, and they're talking about it's a hostage situation, and what do? You shoot the hostage in the leg. It's like, all right, well, now they can't get away with the hostage, so
right,
you've totally taken them out of the equation. It's a horrible choice to make, but it totally changes the equation and takes the power away from the person who took the hostage. So I don't know, maybe they're going to try to find some way to
metaphorically shoot the hostage.
Yeah. Put the whole town in a coma or something, or I don't know what. Summon the Endbringers, make things so horrible that the Slaughterhouse 9 want to leave.
Oh my gosh. Let's not bring those guys up again, please.
Don't summon them. Okay.
No, please don't. Don't. Anyway.
Don't say Leviathan 3 times.
No.
I won't do that.
And that brings us to the end of chapter 4 and the end of what we will be covering for this episode. So we'll cover the remaining chapters of this arc next episode. And as usual, Andy will share his overall impressions and his choice for key characters of the arc. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We hope the new year is off to a good start for you all. And until next time, take care.
As Keith said, thank you for sticking with us, and we're off to a great start here in 2023, and hope you'll continue to enjoy it. We sure are enjoying getting together and talking about it. So thanks for listening. Thanks for joining us in this podcast. We hope you'll like, comment, and subscribe. If not, thanks for stopping by anyway, and we'll hope you'll return. Music is by the band YYNOT from their self-titled debut CD. You can find more in the link down below. Catch you later.